All right, so I think it's interesting because, like I said, growing up, me and my dad were best friends. My mom, like, it's funny because my mom, as I mentioned, she wants me to be independent now or get out of her life and everything. But growing up, I never had to do any chores. I never had to do anything. My mom did everything for me. They treated me like a king, like I said. And like I said, they treated my sister bad. Like, I remember I went to one of my sister's soccer games and my mom was like, "What's wrong with her? She always thinks. Like, she thinks too much. Ryan doesn't think when he plays." And because I was the best, I was amazing. But it was a shoot away machine. My dad got the shoot machine, messed up my shot, and then my dad told me to do the wrong thing. He's the one who screwed me up. And that's when things started going downhill. But my point is, though, like my mom and dad didn't teach me any morality. Like I said, my mom and dad didn't know existential metapsychiatry, what my grandpa taught, because my grandpa learned that when he was 40. He got his PhD when he was 40. So, growing up, I would listen to the Lynch Mob with my dad. I was the only kid that my dad would get me Eminem albums and the Lynch Mob, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, basically all the rap albums. My dad would get them. And I was the only kid that would get the uncensored albums because my family didn't care. My family had no religion, no morality. I never went to church. I went to Hebrew preschool. That was it. I never went to synagogues. I never did any of that stuff. So, I didn't have any morality. And like the Lynch Mob, what they were teaching in that rap music, and this is all the rap music I was listening to, was anti-white stuff. So like they would say that the white man's the devil. And I'm thinking about it, this was the stuff I was listening to growing up my whole life. So, you can't really hate on me for being anti-white in a way, even because I saw myself as Jewish, and I think that really increased my anti-whiteness, and I saw myself as more black. But I was listening to rappers my whole life, Just a Law, Jedi Mind Tricks. My dad got all these albums that were anti-white, that the black man is God and the white man's the devil type of stuff. So, and I'll guess I give another example. Like I remember around like that 2021 time, I was studying a lot of, I started studying Bigfoot online. I was listening to that David Paulides stuff, and David Paulides has that missing 411 stuff. And immediately I recognized a spiritual component to it. But again, what David Paulides was describing is he was saying that that Bigfoot is killing white people and Nordic people. And he thinks that there's like a government conspiracy to kill the white people and the Nordic people. And, he worked in the law enforcement. But I remember when he was talking about Bigfoot doing this and Bigfoot being some sort of spiritual creature, I liked Bigfoot. I was like, yeah, well, Bigfoot's good then. Because Bigfoot's killing the white people and the white people are the devil. Because that's the way that I saw it. Now, I didn't realize that in Hinduism, it's actually the people of color who are the demons and the white people who are the demigods. The white people are on the side of the demigods, the black people are on the side of the demons in Hindu mythology, and the demons and demigods try to take over Earth, and that's what they're trying to do. And the demigods or the demons are the ones who want Marxism. They're like the MS-13, the Salvadorians. Satan worshipers. And it turns out that, I studied now, like in Latin America, they did worship Quetzalcoatl. They did worship the star Venus, and that's Satan, and they worship Shiva, but at this time, like 2021, I was still, my whole life I was anti-white, and I listened to rap music my whole life, and all the rap music I listened to was the white man's the devil. And I like that stuff. I like the Nation of Islam. All the rap music I listened to were people from the Nation of Islam. I used to listen to that stuff all the time. And I was anti-white. But like when I was listening about stuff about Bigfoot, like I said, I wanted to be anti-religious. So I wanted to just think, oh, that's just a delusion. People just have delusions. And really they're seeing bears. They're not really seeing Bigfoot. And it's probably just a projection of the white man's fear of the black man. Bigfoot represents the black man, the violent black man who's killing white people, right? And, taking their women. And, doing all that. But I'm also not stupid, so I recognize the spiritual component. But at the same time, I think I was a Satanist. Because when I'm learning about Bigfoot, and David Paulides is saying, David Paulides was saying that people would hold up a cross to Bigfoot, and Bigfoot would still kill them. And that Bigfoot would kill the Nordics. And I would also study about the gray aliens, and that they would kill the agriculturalists. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that's good. Because the agriculturalists, that's Cain and Abel. The agriculturalists are Cain, and that's the white man. And, killing the agriculturalists, yeah, that's good because, that's the Aryans. Because, the Dravidians were the pastoralists in India, and the Aryans were the agriculturalists. And, you know, in the scholarly perspective, the reason why, you know, the Aryans created the laws against eating cows was because they wanted to maintain wealth and get the pastoralists to become vegetarians so that they wouldn't take the wealth of the cows, so that the Aryan Brahmins could take the cows as wealth. But that's just a scholarly opinion. But my point though is, I was thinking this Aryans versus Dravidians, you know, and the aliens are on the side of the side of the Dravidians. But in my mind, I was like, yeah, and that's the good side. That's the communist side. The Dravidians are the good guys, you know, and even when I would study, you know, like I said, I didn't understand my grandpa's teaching. So my grandpa's saying, like, you know, I studied, like, what does it mean that Krishna eats the butter? And then, like, there was or eats the ghee. And there was this, like, interpretation online. It was like, the ghee, the ghee, you take out some certain part of the ghee, and it represents the transcendence of the ego. So again, I'm like, yeah, okay, Krishna eating the ghee, that represents the transcendence of the ego. But again, in my mind, I was like, transcendence of the ego, that means transcending white supremacy. Fox News is white supremacy. They just want to maintain the white race. They still believe in the separate self. So really, you know, what is you know, good is wanting race mixing and open borders and stuff. But I was just anti-white. I didn't realize that I was still in the ego. So but my point is, you know, but I recognized that there was a spiritual component to, like, the aliens killing the agriculturalists. But in my, you know, that was the demons. The demons want to kill the white race and the Christians, you know, but I like that, you know, and I like the idea that Bigfoot was doing it. But, you know, now I know that, you know, people say that Bigfoot, he smells like sulfur, so he's really like a demon. And they say that one thing he does is, according to David Paulides, he takes women while they're gathering berries. Well, that's what, or gathering fruit. He does that a lot. And that's what Satan did to Eve. He took her while she was, you know, getting fruit. And so Bigfoot's like Satan, and he represents the black man, right? And Eve would represent the white woman, that, you know, and, but I like that. You know, I like that Bigfoot was killing all the Nordics. And so, you know, according to David Paulides, this is like some satanic conspiracy. But in my mind, I'm like, no, the white man's the devil. What Bigfoot's doing is good. Because, you know, I listened to the lynch mob. I listened to all the rappers. They all say the white man's the devil. And I always thought the white man's the devil. And Mark, you know, Jesus was a Marxist. You know, Jesus was on the side of the black man. Jesus was on the side of the people of color. That's what I wanted to believe. You know, Jesus was a Marxist. You know, the criminals are actually the good guys because they're only criminals because of white supremacy. And that's the way I wanted to see things. And, but really, I just wanted to destroy the white race. So I was on the side of Bigfoot. And it turns out Bigfoot's a demon. But I'll get to when I started to change. And when I started to realize, wait, Shukracharya, the god of the Satan of the Hindus, the leader of the demons, he's a Marxist. And I started to realize I'm a Marxist. But this only happened after my daughter died, after my daughter's abortion, when I started to realize this. But I'll get to that. But so, you know, I was like the Nation of Islam. I'm like, yeah, the white man's the devil. So Bigfoot's good. I'm thinking that Bigfoot's a good spiritual animal, and Bigfoot's like me, and he recognizes that the white man is you know, unnatural, and he's hoping to purify the earth by killing the Nordics and killing the white man, right? So, but anyways, yeah. But that's really the way that I saw the world, and so I was really anti-white. It's not even a joke. And then, but as I said, I wanted to talk to my mom and talk to my mom and dad. They wouldn't talk to me, and I tried to get in touch with them, but I remember, you know, like I said, my grandpa stopped teaching me because my grandpa was like, you know, I went to visit him in Washington, and he was like, you know, Ryan, you know, I want you to, you know, be a part of the synergy of the universe. But again, I didn't like the idea of synergy. To me, that seemed like white supremacy. Like, work hard, synergy. And I'm like, I was a worshiper of Shiva, but I didn't even really realize it. But I was a worshiper of Shiva. I wanted destruction. You know? I wanted the white supremacy society to downfall and the people of color to just overtake everything. So, but, you know, but I'm trying to tell my grandpa, because my grandpa's watching basketball, and he's watching, like, Steph Curry, and he's like, isn't he amazing? I'm like, he's not that amazing. I could do all that. And I'm like, you know, And my grandpa's whole thing, so I was telling my grandpa, like, I want to talk to mom and dad, but my grandpa's, not helping me talk to my mom and dad. And he's like, well, if you become independent, then maybe they will talk to you. But that's not true. But my point though is I'm trying to tell my grandpa, like, listen, if you would, I feel like you're the one who messed things up because you're trying to make me independent and stuff. I discovered a theory of everything. The other thing that my grandpa screwed up was his whole, just his spiritual teachings. I feel like were not helpful. Like his thing, like, because I was abused because of the shoot away machine. So I'm like, grandpa, but my grandpa said, well, never talk about the past, because if you talk about the past, you're not in the eternal moment. And so he said Jesus put down his plow and he didn't look back. But the thing was, I wanted to talk about the past, not to talk about the past, but because, and my friend says that I had a good intention, and even my grandpa would admit this. I just want to talk about the past so I can tell mom and dad, so we can have some closure and we can reconcile, and I can say, hey, listen, I know that, because my mom wants to think that there was something wrong with me, that I have some sort of problem of trying to make things happen in the shoot away machine. I want to make things happen, and I couldn't take no for an answer. No, if it wasn't for the shoot away machine, I would have been a star basketball player and everything would have been fine. Everyone would have been happy. But it was a shoot away machine and my dad telling me to do the wrong thing. Really, my dad was the one who was to blame, really. But I wasn't allowed to ever say that because my grandpa also taught in spiritual teaching, never blame. You can't change other people. You only take responsibility for yourself and your own software. And like I said, maybe it was my karma because I was anti-white. But, so I did have dualistic software. But my point is, I'm trying to tell my grandpa, listen, if you guys would have just helped me, I just wanted to get basketball videos. But, when I tried to tell my mom after I graduated college, like, can I talk to dad? She's like, no, he's never going to talk to you. You can't make things happen. You have to accept that. And again, she's misusing my grandpa's teaching. So I'm like, grandpa, your teachings, they misutilize them. And my grandpa admitted, he was like, yeah, I know I cast pearls of swine. So, but I was like, okay, well, can you tell them to stop? And he's like, no, I don't give answers unless questions are asked. You can't change people, unless they ask questions. But I'm like, well, you influence them in this negative way. Why can't you influence them to talk to me? But so basically but I'm telling my grandpa, like, if you guys, if you wouldn't have done this whole, because I tried to tell my mom, can I get basketball videos when I was younger? Can you guys help me? And my mom's like, don't talk about the past. Why do you care about basketball? You're 23 years old, you fucking loser. Why do you care about basketball? This is why you have schizophrenia. I didn't have schizophrenia. I never did. The doctor said I did not have schizophrenia. But my mom's trying to make me into the, and she's just not listening. My mom has mental issues because like I said, the way I see it is because the abuse happened and she has to tell herself that I was the bad guy, because my mom and dad know they abused me after the shoot away machine. Like I said, growing up, there was no problems. Everything was good. And I emphasize that because I don't want people to think to blame the victim and think there was something wrong with me. I was great. And I would have been fantastic. I would have been a star if it had not been for my dad got the shoot away machine and messed up my shot. And I continued to shoot on the shoot away machine. And my dad was telling me to do the wrong thing. And I want to show my dad. I want to show my dad what happened. Because I can show him, if I can show him I don't want to tell you guys because I don't want to make this your thing. But I can show him videos of what I did moving into shots that you can't do with the shoot away machine and why it messed it up. But my point is, if my mom and dad, if my grandpa didn't screw up my mom and dad's minds, and my mom and dad would just listen, I tried to tell my mom, can we get if I would have got basketball videos, I would have been independent. I could always write raps amazingly when I'm playing basketball. But my mom and dad ended up having me injured. So then I even told, like, around 2022, like, I wrote my Based on True Story book, and I'm saying how, I felt like my grandpa was a white supremacist, and if they just would have helped me, instead of when I asked my mom and dad, can you help me, we get basketball videos, like, no talk about the past, no talk about basketball. Ah! If they just would have helped me, I could have got back into basketball. I would have been independent. I could have been playing professional basketball. If I got videos, I definitely would have, because I would have studied how I shot and fixed my shot earlier. And I would have studied the swag flow and all that, which I lost. And I could have been writing raps. I could have been, and also I discovered theory of everything. If I would have just had a little support. But my grandpa's whole thing of, we'll make Ryan independent. No, my grandpa messed things up. My grandpa couldn't discern that I discovered the theory of everything, But maybe it had to happen because I was anti-white and I was a Marxist, but it's complicated. But basically, if my mom and dad just would have talked to me, things wouldn't have. And like I said, all that stuff happened because I was on Kauai. That's why I wrote all the stuff online. If my mom and dad were just talking to me, I wouldn't have been writing all this stuff, all my Marxist stuff online. And like I said, when I was posting my quadrant model stuff online when I was on Kauai, I just wanted to get the quadrant model out. But then my mom was deleting or hiding all my stuff. So then I wasn't getting any response. So I started posting my Marxist stuff to try to get, my theories about the Bible being a trick to save the Jews and to destroy Christianity. I was trying to destroy Christianity, but I wouldn't have done all that if I wasn't on Kauai and isolated, if my mom and dad were just talking to me. So I'm just like, Grandpa, if you guys would have, you're trying to make me independent and stuff, but if you guys would have just talked to me and treated me with some dignity, then maybe I would have got basketball videos. I would be playing basketball. I could have got the quadrant model out. I could be independent, but you guys have been so callous and so mean and so cruel to me, and it backfired. And now I'm definitely not independent. Yeah, but if you guys would have given me a little bit of support and a little bit of love, maybe I would be independent. But so I tried to tell my mom that because I wrote my Based on True Story book, and I was talking about how my grandpa screwed things up, and I felt like my grandpa was just a white supremacist, and I felt like his spirituality and religion was just kind of white supremacy, and he, his not wanting to give welfare and stuff. But then my mom, when I was talking to my mom kind of like, she read that book, and she kind of like grasped onto that. She's like, "You're just a parasite. Why don't you just get a job? I just want you out of my fucking life." And then I'm like, Mom, if you guys had me injured, the fact of the matter was I didn't have a mental illness. The doctor said so. But my mom like I said, I'm not going to get into details, but my mom blackmailed me. You look at the previous lectures. And she told me that she was going to break my basketball videos unless they put me into a psych ward. So she put me into the psych ward, or they wouldn't let me in the psych ward, but I had to say that I was suicidal so they would let me in because my mom was blackmailing me. And then they let me in. As I said, they ended up injuring me. They gave me the injection, and then I hurt my leg, and I couldn't play for 10 years. I couldn't play basketball. I would have been playing basketball. If they would have just helped me get basketball videos, I could have been doing a lot of stuff. But my mom just was really evil, dude. She was really evil. And like I said, she visited me in the psych ward, and I was like, Mom, get me out of here. My mom was like, no. And I was like, Mom, I'm going to tell everybody what you did to me. And she said, no one's going to believe you. You're a fucking schizophrenic freak. No one's going to fucking believe you. So it's kind of messed up. But yeah, so I was trying to tell my mom, like, Mom, if you wouldn't, my mom was like, I just want you independent. I want you out of my fucking life. And I was just like, Mom, if you guys, you're the one who had me injured. And my mom was like, I had you injured? Oh my God. You don't take responsibility for anything. It's like, dude, you did. You're the one who forced me into the psych ward, blackmailing me. You're the one who forced me to Kauai. If you guys would have just talked to me, you're the one who's been mean to me and been evil when I discovered the theory of everything. When I discovered the theory of everything, things could have been really wonderful, but you made things so bad, And it really didn't have to be so bad. You guys could. And when I asked, hey, can I show Dad what happened to my shot? Because I want my dad to see my shot, and I want to show my dad how the shoe messed up my shot, and I want to move on. But no one's listening. My mom and dad, no, talk about the past. Your dad's never gonna fucking talk to you. Never gonna see you. Why can't they just be some fucking normal people? And they forced me on Kauai, and that's when everything spirals. If they would have just talked to me and treated me like a human being, But my grandpa would say, you're not a human being, Ryan. You're energy. You're an energy. So, but I understand what he's saying, though. But I'll get to that. But so, my point is, yeah, so, I'm trying to, my mom, again, she misuses my grandpa's teachings because she doesn't understand. She thinks, you have to take responsibility. She doesn't realize that if she was really following my grandpa's teachings, she would be taking responsibility for her software, not trying to tell me to take responsibility, because that's what existential is. But anyways, so, she's like, oh my God, you think that I hurt you? I'm like, yeah, you did hurt me. You're the one who put me in the psych ward, tried to put me in the psych ward, had to try to get me injured. You ended up getting me injured. And I couldn't play. I would be independent if you wouldn't have done all that stuff. I was doing good with basketball, and I can be if you guys would just talk to me and just support me a little bit. But she's like, oh my God, you blame everybody but yourself. Oh my God, you don't take any responsibility. You're such a fucking piece of shit. And I made a video of it. You're such a fucking piece of shit. And when I'm talking, she talks worse than I talk. Like, people think I'm exaggerating, but she talks worse than it because I can't even replicate because I'm not that evil in my mind. You're such a piece. Oh my God, you're such a fucking piece of shit. You think that I hurt you? I was like, yeah, I wanted to be on a first floor apartment. You forced me to be on a second floor apartment because you're so angry at me and your mentality was so evil to me. And then I ended up hurting my leg because I was trying to recover from the shot. And I was like, oh my God, you don't take responsibility for anything. The fact of the matter is, yes, I'm not saying that I'm an innocent victim. Yes, I'm not saying that. But if I had a little bit of kindness and compassion, and if I had some normal parents who were not being evil, I don't think a lot of the crazy stuff would have happened. So I'm just asking for some love, some compassion, and some understanding, and a little bit of help and support. But my mom doesn't get that. So I'll continue.